Hey Gus, thanks for your work here in week five. Uh, Challenging segment of the narrative, and you got some great stuff, I think, in both forums. I think I'm going to start with forum one, where I'm glad you kind of keyed into the phrase this generation. And I agree with Carter that it does have a temporal character. It is about people of a particular time, and it's not just about, all people of all times of a certain failure or something like that. Of course, it does have connotations that are kind of negative in terms of how the people are responding to the call of prophets. And in this sense, it kind of echoes the proverbial generations of Israel's past, probably especially the wilderness generation. But even there, you can tell that the connotations about the kind of shortcomings of a generation don't eliminate the temporal nature of generation. And so we have to, in my mind, kind of hold those together. So good stuff there. I think with Sodom and Gomorrah, Jesus is warning at least about Sodom that, you know, the towns that he denounces in Galilee, Chorazin, Bethsaida, Capernaum, they're going to fare worse in the coming judgment. And the way Jesus says, then these notorious city states, city kingdoms of Israel's past. And I think what I want to add to what Turner's saying there is that the judgment in view is not just like where these people went when they died kind of thing. It's what befell those cities. The fact that Sodom specifically was left in ruins and destroyed so utterly that there was no remnant of people on the earth that survived to claim to be the remnant of the people of Sodom. And Jesus is saying that that is what is going to happen to these Galilean towns because of how, especially the authorities in them, I think, have led their people astray over time and are refusing the call of prophets like John and Jesus to repent and to embrace the ways that the kingdom of heaven is inviting them to live. So that's just a added note there on what kind of judgment seems to be in view with the precedents of Sodom and Tyre and Sidon. Um, I guess maybe one last thing is I do think that, Carter's right that Jesus is challenging family. I just want to caution against the tendency that a lot of Christians have to conceive of Jesus' words against his mother and siblings that come for him. At least it seems to be against them in some sense, is not Jesus disowning them or canceling family bonds as if they didn't exist anymore and redefining family in some new way. I think that Jesus is challenging the bonds that unite extended families together, especially as part of a wider pattern of his generation. But he's not sort of simply canceling them out and starting over or something along those lines. We're going to see that Jesus remains invested in the family bonds of his people, even as he is challenging how those are shaping people's lives and calling for those bonds to be changed to grow in certain ways rather than kind of being entrenched in the face of the challenge that Jesus poses to them. So that's from Forum One. From Forum Two, I think I just wanted to say something about this phrase that you've got that I think is really important. It's where you say that the healings of Jesus are symbolic. Here it is. It's the second sentence, the second paragraph. They were not simple miracles, but symbolic acts that challenge the authority and values of the Roman Empire. I think that's right. Uh, and we want to sort of try to get at what does Jesus's say healing a person demonized and thereby blind and mute, like what does that symbolize that Jesus brings healing to that kind of body? Um, but I want to also go a little further and say that the the acts of healing that Jesus does, they have a rippling effect through the relationships of people connected to the person who is healed. And so symbolically, we might say that Jesus is freeing the speech and the hearing of his people. And that is against the way that imperial structures or other kinds of tendencies have produced a kind of inability to speak truthfully to one another and to hear from one another in the community. But I think that just sort of thinking concretely out from this one person that Jesus heals, now this person is going to be able to speak, is going to be able to hear. Other people are going to be able to speak to this person and hear from this person. And so there's a kind of healing effect that ripples out from this person's body in virtue of all of the people to whom he's related concretely in his life and his place. And that's key, I think, to the nature of Jesus's deeds of power and how they present a threat in some ways to some of the ruling structures that have rendered the people over time deaf to each other, unable to speak truthfully to each other. Um, but beyond that, I think it's also important just to name how a kind of healing is flowing into the wider community through this one particular body that Jesus meets and heals. And then, of course, people are watching this, they're observing it, they're learning from it themselves, and they become agents by what they hear and what they see of this healing power as witnesses to what Jesus has done, and then as themselves people who will be sharing that kind of power of the kingdom with others. So symbolic is a good way in, but I want us to sort of push that out even a little farther so that we're thinking very concretely about the ripple effect of these deeds of healing that we're reading about in Jesus. And of course, they're always coupled with an exchange of words, often with particular characters who hold certain positions of power. And that also should inform what we think Jesus's healings are about. So, hope that's helpful, Gus. Thanks again for your work in week 5.